can I get a couple of those cards so I can write on stuff? I need something firmer to write on.
Couple of
The
cards.
the descriptions of
Yeah,
the
so she's
duty
not writing on the
master.
soft tablecloth.
Oh, okay.
For the duty master stuff.
Oh, so which one? Is it?
Last one.
Yeah, like that
Oh,
stack
these
over
things?
there.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Or that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, morning. You have a short group today. So we get started with. I'll be acting president. Also, I'll be sergeant at arms. Welcome to the September 25th Toastmasters meeting. So, first I would like to invite our guests. How's her name? Manos. Yes, yes. To introduce yourself and tell us how you got to Toastmaster and how you you found out about us.
Sure,
Yeah.
my name is Manos. I work at the startup in Sunnyvale, and I'm in the first year of MBA program. So I wanted to work on my public speaking, and I was looking into different Toastmasters. I have been here many years ago once, and I just wanted to try and see which Toastmaster will fit.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm the same way too. I had a few meetings, and then there was a time when I was traveling, and then I came back, and that's when I finally joined. It's kind of a matter of adjustment. I found out that Toastmaster is kind of very helpful for making you more articulate and more spontaneous in a lot of situations. With my job too. That's why.
That's what I
Yeah,
realized.
that's how you need it.
Right.
Yeah.
There are lots of clubs in this area. One advantage of joining a small club like this is I'm part of a larger club, which means that I only get one speech slot every blue moon because there's so much competition.
Sure.
So with a smaller club, you have a lot more opportunity to give speeches and get practice faster.
Sounds good.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi.
I matched with with the room today.
Yeah.
So black.
So,
Sorry.
okay. So we now proceed to the invocation. Everybody stand. The invocation I picked was based on basically I was going through what else do we need to cover as far as I will always figure that invocations will always be something inspirational or something as that's something where you can have a lesson learned. And I thought, well, this is a good one. I said, being content with what you have, and so it makes you contemplate on what does it mean, right? Being content or being satisfied with what you have. My first impression when I saw the phrase was it was more like an urge or an invitation to be positive in life. There's a certain negative side of it in that being content seems like you're trying to be, or you could be passive in your life, right? So there's a two ways in the whole thing. But I like it in the positive sense wherein it says being content, meaning you're happy with what you have, you realize what you've achieved, and it's inviting more positivity into your life, right? So very much like climbing a stair. You know, when you make it to the next rung, right? You should be happy, survey what you have, and invite more and appreciate the things that you've done and the things that you achieve. And so, in that sense, I would like everybody, our Toastmaster members and guests, to think about things that we achieved and positive things that we could do to keep that train roll going. Thank you very much. So I'll also call on our duty master to define the different roles that we have available. We have a short man today, so it will be a simple list of our duty masters. The first one will be our counter, I believe. Harun will be our accountant. Yes, a brief discussion of what you do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do, yeah.
It's like-
Yes,
Good morning, everybody. Today I will be the counter. I will be counting your ahs and ums and ands and any kind of filler words that you will spontaneously say during while you're speaking. And I will be reporting back at the end of the meeting during the evaluation phase of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll find that at the end of the meeting, an counter helps you think back on what you've said, and that's right. I did say those a few words, repetitive words, or non-essential words, right? So it helps you recover, think back in time, and remember. So our next duty master will be our timer, which will be Dan. Dan will be the timer. Yeah.
Thank you. Excuse me, sorry. Thank you. Toastmaster speeches typically last 5 to 7 minutes, but it's very common for people to either go under or go on to a really long speech. And since timing your speeches correctly is kind of important, I'll be keeping an eye on you. And when you hit 5 minutes, I'll be showing the green card. At 6 minutes, I'll show the yellow card. At 7 minutes, I'll show the red card. And I believe in this club, 30 seconds over is the bell.
Yes.
And at 7 minutes 30 seconds, I'll be dinging you, which doesn't mean you have to stop, but it does mean that you'll experience great shame. Similarly, the evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes. Green at 2, yellow 2.5, red at 3. Table topics are 1 to 2 minutes. Green at 1, yellow at 1.5, red at 2, and in both cases, the bell 30 seconds over. And I'll give a report of the times at the end. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do we have a word for the day?
I can come up with a word. I'll be a word master.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, the word for today, I just came up with it.
Mhm.
I have to write it down.
No. This is what you came up with after long and careful consideration.
Very careful.
Nobody else has to know otherwise.
The word for today is rapture. You have to use it every time you speak. It means an expression of ecstasy. We didn't use the word ecstasy, but we're using the word rapture. So use it, and the way you use it is coming to Toastmaster is rapturous. You can use it as a adjective. Mr. Toastmaster and fellow Toastmaster, use the word when you speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know word for day is very useful because whenever you do speeches, it's nice to actually tag a few speeches, a few choice words in your speech. That way, you kind of know how to organize words in that, organizing your speech in that sense. As far as adding words, key points basically. It's a trainer for key points that you want to incorporate in your speech. So that's a good one. Gormaria, we don't have Gormaria. Ballot, I'll be counting the ballots at the end. At the end. We don't Gormaria. Okay. So Tony will be Gormaria. Please describe your role.
So as a grammarian, I will keep track on how people use words and sentences and that kind of stuff. So make sure that whatever you say is grammatically correct.
Thank you. Ballot counter. I'll be the ballot counter. You'll be giving the awards right at the end. Okay. And video master. I'll be video master. Our video is set up to just autoplay. It's not downloaded to YouTube yet. I will do it after. Anybody who doesn't want it, just let me know and I'll turn the video away. The video is basically covering this area here for everybody who's presenting. It's a good feedback again another feedback for you when you make your speeches, in that you have a visual sense of what you look like, how you actually move, so you'll understand, and then later on develop your speech ability that way in a visual sense. Okay, so we move on to our speakers. We have yes.
Can you reassign evaluators since we have 2 more people?
Okay, right.
today, do you need any more speaker? Impromptu speaker? Because
Oh.
we have one speaker today, right?
Well,
Technically, we have two.
We have
oh,
two.
But
yeah, wonderful.
You want
we
third one?
we were talking evaluators now.
Evaluator. So
Let's figure out how many people got for evaluation.
so you want evaluator 1?
Oh,
Would you like
whoa,
that?
hold on.
Go ahead.
Who do we have as evaluators right now?
We have
You
And you.
me, and I'm GE and evaluator. So
I can take one.
okay.
okay. So
So in theory, that's 3. So in theory, we could have one more speech if we want. Do we want another speech? Because we have to compress the table
Two
topic.
is good. 'Cause
Two is
we-
good.
Yeah.
Do you want to take my slot instead? I'm fine.
so
with
who's
either.
evaluator
No.
1? Who's evaluator 1?
Maybe-
Tony?
Yeah.
Tony evaluator. Okay. And then Harun evaluator 2. Okay.
I'm only gonna have
All
2
right.
speeches. You're sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I-
Yeah.
This is
Who am I evaluating?
Yes, you're evaluator 2.
Who am I evaluating?
I think you're. Oh wait,
Georgie.
are you going first?
I'll do first. Oh, you want to do first?
I don't care. I'm very laid back on this, guys. Really.
Okay. So we're set.
yeah.
We're good,
Yay.
right? Okay. So our first speaker.
Wait, we have a hand.
Hold on.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to be very clear now.
Go ahead.
I am evaluating Georgie,
Yes.
and Wei Ming is being evaluated by.
Tony.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Super.
Yeah, okay. So our first speaker is Wai Ming. He speaks on about a lot of varied subjects, which is very interesting, and it's always something to pick up on. He goes to different topics. He's been with the Toastmaster for what 2 years?
More than that.
More for years. And so there's a lot of wisdom in what he says, and his methods are unique. Also, you'll notice that he's a more laid back method of speaking. And so again, you'll see his different speaking styles when you join us, and so you'll understand. And so I introduce Wai Ming. Yes.
Thank you, Jose. So for the timer, I'd like to ask for 6 to 8 minutes.
6 to 8.
So,
Okay.
So I'm going to demonstrate something of taking advantage of a situation. Whenever a situation looks not so good, for me is always an opportunity. So I want to demonstrate it. The last time I came here and speak, just a few weeks ago, I was going to prepare a Skype meeting where we have some discussions on how we could improve the club to get more members here. Unfortunately, I ran out of time. And then I have a speech coming up next week to report on that Skype meeting. So the way to take advantage of opportunity is, since no one's speaking, I'm going to use this forum, the next 6 to 8 to 10 minutes, as my Skype meeting to conduct some discussion, and then I'll report on the next week, and then I can satisfy my speech requirements. So that's the idea of taking advantage of an opportunity to speak, opportunity to have an audience, and then have some feedback. So, and the situation we have is we have a club that has some really recalcitrant members who always come here. And then we have a lot of missing people. Especially when you were here the last time, I would say there were a lot of people. So that's my impression. However, we have a lot fewer people now. And the last time I talked about having a discussion where we have trying to find ways to bring in members. That's certainly a set of activities that our officers would do. Today, I'm going to talk about, have a brief discussion on what each one of us could do. Because in order to bring in people, actually it comes from ourselves, what we do. And then by what we do, by showing our own rapture, how we can then maybe influence other people. So just 2 points of discussion, and then I like to have folks provide some ideas. I'll write it down, and then next week I'll report that. Very simple stuff. One is, how do we actually bring ourselves to take advantage of the situation? Since a lot of times when we come to a club like this, we look at other people to get energy. And when there are fewer people, it's harder to get energy. So how do we generate our own energy? Like, get some ideas. How do we get our own energy up so that we actually be the source of energy rather than trying to come to a place, everyone's happy, and then we are happy? Can we get some ideas? Yes.
Well, one interesting thing I've seen at some Toastmasters meetings was, you know how we all go through this process of saying, my role is going to be counting the ahs and ums. I've been at some meetings where people really interject a lot of flavor, personality into that. Like, it is going to be my honor to keep track of the number of ahs and ums, things like that, keeping it upbeat. I try to do a little bit of that with the whole line, keeping an eye on you line with the timer, although I do not do it nearly as well as many people I've seen.
That's great, thank you. And that's the idea, that you just want to project anything that's positive. At least that's my interpretation. Is that right?
Yeah. Another club, the person who starts the meeting always launches it with getting everyone involved. Like, welcome to our club. Club number, and everyone repeats 7975. Reciting the club number is silly, but it does get everybody involved in speaking at least.
That's good, getting people to speak. Now, one question I have is, it's really hard for me anyway to wake up early in the morning and come here, because if I look at my week, I wake up at 6:30 every day, except for Wednesday, when I have to wake up like 5:30 or 6 o'clock. And I come here. By the time I come here, it's around 7 o'clock. When I normally, the other days, I go to work toward 8 o'clock, so there's an hour shift. It's really hard to get that energy up when I'm still half asleep. So how do you wake up earlier? Or do you guys wake up earlier on Wednesday?
Maybe.
I'm a morning person, so.
That's good. Morning is good. I'm not quite a morning person, so that's part of the issue. You
Be
guys
friend with a morning person.
Make friend with a morning
make
person.
friends with a morning person.
Like accountability partner.
That's good. Accountability partner. I'm keep writing these things down. So part of the thing is be able to show up as often as possible, yeah. And being officers, definitely you guys are showing up. At the same time, if you're not an officer, how do we try to be consistent? One thing, yes.
I would suggest that the most important thing for lining up things for the meeting is being prepared, and that probably comes down to making sure that we've got a Toastmaster who's going to send out a lot of notices to people, basically bug them a bit, encourage them very strongly in a very rapturous way to get here and to sign up for roles in advance, so people are thinking about being here on Wednesday morning.
So when you say advance, how much in advance?
In the olden days, back when we were just doing everything via email before the WhatsApp was introduced, I would try to make certain that we had at least one notice going out about roles in the next meeting on at least Friday or Saturday before the meeting. So that way we had like several days for people, especially over the weekend, for people to think about preparing a speech and putting things together. So that way they could put a little more time and effort into it.
That's good. So that in itself is preparing. So does it prevent us from sending out email in addition to WhatsApp today?
No, I mean, I'm thinking we should do both, but maybe, like I said, send it out before the weekend so that people can start thinking about preparing their speeches or their table topics ahead of time. They'll have the weekend, and that way they have a little time to think about it before work starts, is what I'm saying.
That's good. Other ideas? Yes.
I was talking about the benefits that people will gain through these meetings, or maybe reminding them of the benefits that they will gain. Because for me, thinking about the goal kind of motivates me to make earlier on the rapturous in an activity that I'm trying to take. So I think that would be a good motivation.
And that is to remind people that, or to set goals.
Yeah.
And then seeing what the benefit would be. That's great.
Do you want 6 to 8 or 8 to 10?
8 to 10.
8
Do I have 8 to 10?
Yeah, I thought I heard you change your mind.
Yeah. Do we have 8 to 10 or 6 to 8?
I had 6 to 8, but
Okay,
changing it to
sorry.
8 to 10.
So we have 2 more minutes. That's good. I appreciate it. So that's one part of it is just the idea that, what was the idea?
How to get people here and have goals.
How do you get here? How do you demonstrate? How do you get your own energy up so you can come here? And part of it, preparation, setting goals. Part of it is getting partners, and then projecting the energy so that when you yourself project energy, other people feel it, and then they feel they want to come. That's sort of the idea. The second point I like to briefly have some discussion is an opportunity, because we have fewer people. There's now time slots for people to use that. Now, to do a prepared speech is really hard, because you have to think through where you're going to find the topic and so on, and then figure out how to speak it, maybe practice it. By the time you finish, it's a few days before you can come on. So one thing we might want to consider is more impromptu speeches. And how do you prepare for impromptu speeches? Maybe you think through the day and what are the key elements to impromptu speeches, so that when you need it, you can come up and speak. And I see Raj doing that. Raj is not here today, and I try to do it because even this speech is so impromptu. It came out last night, and Georgie is going to do. I think it's going to be an impromptu speech. So, and in order to do that, and in fact, when we go into professional life, we'll have to do more of that, because the things come up. It's a matter of practice, and it's an opportunity now because we have a lot of time slots that people can practice. So some ideas. How do we prepare for impromptu speeches? How do you do it?
Usually when I'm doing different activities, I think about, could I turn this into a speech? For example, I'm not going to talk about this today, but what I could talk about today is I was looking at the news last night, and it turns out there's going to be, don't want to get into politics, but there is going to be an impeachment proceeding going on that people may or may not have heard about yesterday. It only took place yesterday. So in theory, I could touch on just the latest news on that without invoking any concept of for or against anything, but just give people an update on what's going on in the news. Or, for example, I look at news across, on YouTube across the world, or try to, and there was about a month ago an update on what's going on in Lahore, there in Pakistan. We went to a movie that talked about Lahore as part of the Startup Speaks, one of our events, and so I could share kind of what's going on over there as well for people who might be interested in traveling to exotic places. You can talk about anything, quite literally. It's only 5 to 7 minutes, and that sounds like a lot of time until you actually start doing it. There's a lot of, like I said, topics to go through.
That's good. Well, we ran out of time, but the idea is, let me just quickly summarize the 2 points. One point is, how do we get energy so we can come here? And I'll try to summarize it next week as I speak. And the second one is, how do we use that extra time that's available? And part of it is preparing ourselves for impromptu speeches, so when the opportunity comes up, we can come and speak. So 2 things that we could do personally to really help bring the energy, in fact, take advantage of the opportunity so we can actually grow ourselves in addition to maybe infecting other people to come. Mr. Toastmaster.
by me. It was a good coverage of some of the motivational rapture and energy that we can bring to the club. That was very good. Our next speech will be with.
Are we
this-
gonna give?
Oh, that's
feedback?
right. The evaluation. That's right.
For the benefit of the guest, this is to give any feedback you want to on that little sheet with perforations on it.
Sure. We have some.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, you have to write with blood.
Character development.
Before we proceed, I'd like to have a star. What's your name? Starlet. Yeah, Starlet to introduce herself and what brought you to the club and what your goals are. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Starlet. I was here last week,
Yeah.
and I'm just here to, again, this week to learn more about the club and potentially becoming a member,
Sure.
improving my speech skills, and learning more from you guys as well.
Okay. So our next speech will be with Georgie. She has her speech topic is on character development. Again, let's bring our hands for Georgie.
Hey, good morning, everyone. How many of us have recently completed reading a book? Reading/listening to. I'm going to assume a lot of people that I'm looking at probably have listened to it or read a book relatively recently. Most of us are into self-improvement and self-education. I just completed one yesterday, actually, an audio book called The President is Missing. Okay? It's from James Patterson, who's a very famous author, and it was also co-written by former President Clinton. And perhaps I may have gotten my expectations up a little higher. I was really hoping for something, I'm not really sure, maybe a little bit more intriguing than what I got. This is my own personal take on the book, obviously. I was expecting something with a little bit more of a background on what was actually happening in the White House, since the man had been there for 8 years. But I didn't really get that. And more importantly, through the book, the main character is the President of the United States. And I don't know what it's like in other countries around the world, but we expect in the United States our leader to be able to fly jets, dodge bullets, punch people in the face, all sorts of action hero stuff. That's the concept of what the President of the United States is supposed to do in the book. I realize that doesn't make a lot of sense, but all you need to do is look at Harrison Ford starring as a president, Air Force One, and you will see there is a precedent for this, okay? So it's not me just saying this. A lot of other people have noticed this technique as well. Evidently, the president's job of actually going to meetings and talking to people is far too boring to put into a book or a movie. Now, what I thought was interesting about this book is the president in the book, for better or for worse, is written as what some people on the internet would call a Gary Stu or a Mary Sue. Basically, what this means is a character that's almost written from fan fiction, a person that has such amazingly good qualities. There's almost nothing wrong with this person. And for people who haven't read the book or can't think of it, another one that was maybe recently put together in the popular culture are the new Star Wars movies with Rey and Kylo and things like that. A lot of the older fans were not really thrilled with the new Star Trek movies, and part of it, they say, is because the characters are just really too good to be believed, and it doesn't make for an intriguing story. You don't need to take my word for it. You can look online. They have opened up Star Wars parks in Disney World and Disneyland, and they're getting almost no traffic. That could be because there aren't many rides in these parks yet. There's like one ride or something. But it may be because, as you may have noticed from the Halloween celebrations we've had the last few years, you don't see any little Reys or little Kylos running around. They're always like superheroes, like Spider-Man and Thor and things like that. So I think if there was a way to judge the popular culture, there should be a Halloween costume ratio to see which costumes the kids are actually wearing and what they're into. I think part of this might be coming from writers not writing to something that they truly enjoy, writing more for a corporate background. For people around here, you are probably aware that George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney for about $4 billion. So he did quite well on it. And Star Wars, I'm sure, will not be a money loser for Disney. They won't make as much money, maybe, as they had hoped to, but they're not going to lose money from it. But I think, from my point of view, what's more important is the character development in this. When I think of a writer who does really good character development, and once again, everybody's a different take on it, but I believe that Jane Austen is pretty good about writing a character. She will introduce a character, and within a sentence or two, you can get a real feel for this character as a person, both for the good qualities and their bad qualities. She has a way of writing about a character, so you can almost picture the character very, very quickly in your mind, and there's some depth to these characters as a result. As I said, it seems like with some of the content we're getting out now, such as the book I just completed, The President is Missing, such as Star Wars, things are being written without a lot of depth and thought given to the characters. And I think we can think of that as carrying over to other things that we build in our lives. For example, there is a famous entrepreneur by the name of Peter Thiel. He's one of the PayPal mafia. He's a founder of Palantir, a company that may be going IPO pretty soon. He's also known for a lot of the advice that he gives to startups and entrepreneurs. And there's a concept he has of companies, startups having of successful companies having a quality, a character to them. And he suggests that good companies have a different quality that's unique all to themselves. But I think another way to summarize it would be to focus on his quote of, "You should focus relentlessly on something you are good at doing, but before that, you must think hard about whether it will be valuable in the future." I think that a lot of the content, such as the book I just read, such as the Star Wars movies, are being put out with a thought to making money, but not necessarily about putting out something that will be of value to the future. I would suggest to all of us, especially those working on startups or things like that, to think about what we're going to bring that's going to be of value to others, to our company, to our employees, to our customers and figure out what will be of value to them, not just today, but in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgie, for that speech. It was very good coverage on character development. You'll notice that it had a very good description of what a character, how the character should develop and its effect, not just on the audience, but also in the consequence of it, right? The future, the future consequence of the characters that you create. So it's more like a dynamics with society, right? So that's very good. So, and now we go into the evaluation part of the. Oh yeah, by the way, I always forget that. Set. Good. All right. So we move on to the evaluation part of the meeting. Our general evaluator, she will evaluate the general opinion, her general feedback of the evaluators and of the overall meeting. She'll be Georgie.
This is actually one of the more interesting parts of the meeting from my point of view, because in the evaluation we get instant feedback on the speeches that we just gave. So it allows you to improve. Obviously everyone's take on the evaluation is slightly different, but we are going to start with, Tony is going to be giving an evaluation of Wah-Ming. So please help me welcome Tony. Give us his evaluation.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, guests. So I have the privilege of not only to be an evaluator, but also the grammarian. So I have a double eyes on the same topic. And so first of all, to Wah-Ming, to have, I divide the way that I evaluate to speak into 3 categories. How you use a word, how you have the subject, verb, agreements, and also like plural and singular nouns. And last is the non-verbal and other notes. For the first part, the word usage, I dig into detail because like just to make sure that there is something to come to habit. And if you heard of it, the next time when you start to kick in your habit, you will be alert. So in the very beginning of the speech, you have the so at the beginning instead of you say so. So you use the filler word. That so is kind of unnecessary at the very beginning of the speech. And then the second one is the instead of come to a place. So it's usually instead of coming to a place. So the noun or the gerund will come after the of. The verbs and subject agreements. First of all, some discussion. So I realized that you're usually missing the s at the end of the nouns or the verb that's subject to the third position in the beginning. And the next one is part of the thing is being able to. So part of the thing is being able, is you say is be able to, or you can say also is the ability to. You can put the noun in there instead of it's a gerund phrase. And last but not least is the non-verbal and other notice. Yeah. So first of all, I really appreciate that you bring in the brainstorming session as a speech, which is a lot of people in here use that skill before in the workplace. That how to conduct a brainstorming session, and you just did it beautifully. How to gather information, how to gather the ideas, how to make other people. We call networking minds. So when people say something and other people pop up something else, and we come up with a lot of ideas. So I really appreciate the way that you put the brainstorming session into your speech. And also because when we conduct a speech like this, you yourself will put energy into the crowd. So the way that we stand, the way that we speak, first we should stand closer to a person that you're starting to get the idea from them. So we like subconsciously encourage them to speak more instead of you stand pretty far from the crowd like here, unless you are writing down the idea on the board. And also when you change the topic, so for example, the first question you got an idea, you might standing in this place, and when you change to the next topic, you start moving your position to help the audience who is like a concentration or half sleep mind like me will okay change the question, and then I start to put my brain into the next question. Yeah, so that is my evaluation for Wami. Thank you very much.
Our second evaluation, which will be for myself, is going to be from Harun, and he is to be as vicious as possible.
Fellow Toastmasters, good morning again. So,
Ben, sorry, are you guys using the
Room service.
okay, cool. Let's get started again. Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to be evaluating Georgie's speech today, and Georgie had a really broad survey of our culture, media, and the way we've been conducting and consuming our media. So she started off with an introduction about James Patterson's Presidents, the book that she recently read, and then took that idea and character development into popular culture, how we're making the new movies that we're making, what our current trends are, and then moving on to taking that and threading that same logic into character development and how corporate sponsorship is becoming the means to pay for content creation, and then trying to sort of sum that up at the very end. Really broad survey and very well done, because that, considering that you prepared that speech right here and now. For me, though, the one criticism that I have is that I had a hard time pinning on what your main theme was, because you started off with James Patterson's and Bill Clinton's book, and about character development and how, and that's one criticism I've had about, why are these characters so good? It's something that I've noted. Like I've said before, I've been watching The West Wing, and you get this impression that the main character is the president. Everybody is this super amazing. Obviously, there's a political slant to that show as well, and they're super smart. And while they do show some weak character weaknesses, they do get to a point where it seems that they're perfect. But it's the same point that I've seen that show up in what George's for her explanation in her book. So there is some kind of sort of bland, one-dimensional character dimensionality to that. So I started off, the speech started off with about character development, went about media consumption. What I think would have actually made the speech much more effective is that if you had brought that last point at the very end, when you talk about what Peter Thiel was talking about value creation for the future, and had bumped that to the top and said, hey, this is what I want to talk about. And all of these things would have kind of threaded together, and you could have tied that together really well. So that was the one thing that I found, but thank you, that was a really great survey. I'm going to try and pick that book up myself and read and see it. I've seen that at Barnes & Noble, so thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you. So now we get to the point where the general evaluator evaluates the evaluations that you just heard. Once again, more and more feedback. And I'm going to start with Tony. You gave an excellent evaluation for Well-Ming, who has been giving speeches for a long time. It can be really hard when someone has been giving speeches for a while to find anything to really criticize. The only slight suggestion I would make is that in Toastmasters, we are encouraged to use what's called the sandwich method for giving feedback. Because sometimes people can be sensitive to criticism, especially when you're up here kind of exposing yourself to giving a speech. So one of the things we do is that we give critical feedback sandwiched between a couple of good points. So you start off saying, okay, Well-Ming, you did this really well. This is something you might want to consider improving. And once again, I thought your speech was great. You did this really, really well. So once again, you kind of wrap the difficult parts into something nice and more enjoyable. I would consider that. You started off by talking about the subject-verb agreement, which was great, and then you talked about how strong the brainstorming was. I think that if you had started with giving him some positive feedback about the brainstorming and then moving into the criticism and then a nice little tie-in, it would probably have been a little, it wasn't a big deal because like I said, Well-Ming is quite used to this. But for a new person, that might be a little easier way to take the news. Okay, Haroon, I think you were correct. The concept with the value creation, making a better theme for it would probably have been better. So yes, my structure definitely could use more improvement on that. And the next thing I believe that we are supposed to do, I just want to remind people that you were supposed to pick vote for the best or most improved evaluator and speaker at the bottom of the form. And I will be back later to evaluate the meeting itself. With that, I will turn it back over to our Toastmaster.
Thank you, Georgie. Very good evaluation of the evaluators. So we go to this part of the meeting, which gives you the opportunity to express yourselves extemporaneously, impromptu speech. So I'll call on Haroon to be our table topics master. He'll be introducing topics for each and every one of us.
Okay, so this topic was a little hard for me because I didn't quite understand how to actually approach this topic. People's sense of contentment is very different. You know, it's just as unique as we are unique as individuals. So here's my take on it. So one of the questions that I was thinking about was that how do you differentiate between being frugal and being content? Starlet, would you like to go first?
Maybe one of the members should go first, or?
We don't have much time, so yeah,
Yeah.
just the guess.
Okay.
Would one of the guests like to
One of the guests like to go?
volunteer? If not, it's not a problem.
It's not a problem.
Take it.
Frugal. What is the difference between being frugal and being content?
What does frugal mean?
Like me.
There you go.
Frugal means sparing or being economical with money or food.
Yeah, don't use money.
Cheap cheap would be the derogatory term, but yes.
I find great rapture in being frugal, aka cheap. But it isn't directly connected to my contentment. I am content with the things that I do have, but not because I'm frugal, but because I am happy with the things that I have in my life. However, I do want more, and there is a conflict there at times to want more, but being content. Am I not content with what I have because I do want more and I do strive to want more? Not necessarily so. Will I always be frugal? In my desire to achieve more? Who knows? But what I do know is, it is, for me, a challenge to make a connection with contentment and being frugal, because you can be frugal and not be content. You can be content and not be frugal. So there is a challenge to find a correlation between the two, for me personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Scarlett. That was really good. Okay. So a lot of time, people think about contentment about material things, and that led me to think about, okay, why do people want things? I mean, and I wanted to know that what your take on this notion of, since the entire American economy is kind of built on people consuming stuff. What is your take on consumerism, that the way we live our lives over here? Dan, would you like to take that?
Honestly, this one ranks a great big I don't know from my perspective. Obviously, a lot of the consumption that we do is necessary, if for no other reason than consumption includes things like food, housing, clothing, etc. Things that we really can't live without. Well, maybe technically we could live without housing, but I wouldn't want to try it, especially not if you live in Wisconsin. But the phrase consumerism is often used pejoratively to refer to the desire to always have the most toys, the biggest and best of everything, which does tend to, at some point, you hit a point of diminishing returns in terms of happiness. Heaven knows that people have studied, how happy people are versus how much they have, and there's definitely a point in the income and spending level where it really starts flattening out. At that point, you really have to wonder what's the point anymore. Certainly, I, for one, am a big fan of tax models where you have a very progressive tax system that kind of caps income after a certain point to some extent, so that people with less income can actually get the food, clothing, and shelter that they need in order to just basically survive and have some luxuries above that to make life more worthwhile. Basically, while you're still on that rising edge of the curve before things start leveling out. And that's all I can think of to say. I'm sorry. No words of wisdom here.
Thank you, sir. Okay. So, can you give an inspirational person who has inspired you to make do with less? Jose. Beat content.
We make do with less. Oh. inspirational person. So I believe the question requires me to come up with an inspirational person, and somehow the person has to make do with less.
Do you want another question?
Hey, give me another question.
Okay.
It threw me.
Okay, so here's another one. Many of us have come from different countries. What have you observed in wherever you've traveled in the past about how people have done, what their views on being content is, and how do they live their lives without considering being happy with what they have?
Okay. Okay. Actually, I came from a foreign country, so I've done a lot of traveling myself, and I noticed that there's a lot of you kind of don't want to, when you travel, and this is one thing I learned, that you cannot think of yourself as above somebody else, maybe because they're economically below, right? Those are numbers, but actually you'll understand if you observe people around the world. They can do with much less and be, in a lot of sense, very, very happy about it. There is a magical substance within their lives that a lot of us may not actually experience, and so because with meagerness, with being frugal, with being you're forced to manage yourself, you manage your resources, and to a point where what is left, right? The spiritual side is left, happiness is left, your relationship is left, things that we in the modern world may actually realize that we may be missing, right? And so that's something you will notice, that a lot of, for example, me being in Asia, a lot of our culture is more into family. Our expansion of relationships is much more, and the interaction and the family gatherings is much more dynamic because of that. Because we have less, but we do compensate, and we somehow our lives are compensating for something much more. Like I said, spiritual happiness, relationships, and all the other parts of life. So they're in another balance of their lives, and I appreciate that with other people. Thank you.
Do we have time for another one?
Toastmaster, do we have time for more questions?
No.
Okay.
It's actually already. Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And that's it.
The G. Yeah.
I'd like to hand over the meeting back to our general counsel.
Thank you. And I'm supposed to call in the duty masters, right? And is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Duty masters.
So let's start with the timer. Dan, can you give us our times, please?
Thank you. Weiming, nominally 8 and 10 minutes. You went for 12 minutes, 27 seconds, although a lot of that, of course, was from the audience feedback. Georgie, you had 5 to 7 minutes. You were right in there with 6 minutes, 27 seconds. The evaluators were both right within the time, 2 to 3 minutes. 20 was 1 minute, 35 seconds. But he also had 2 minutes for grammarian, so I'm not really too sure how to count that. And Haroon was 2 minutes, 50 seconds. So, at any rate, table topics, 1 to 2 minutes. Starlet, you were 1 minute, 2 seconds. I was 1 minute, 46 seconds. And Jose, you ran right to the end there at 2 minutes
2
even.
minutes. 2 minutes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Just to remind everybody, if you could please hand the ballots over to our ballot counter over here, and she will tally up our ballots.
So we're also doing best evaluator, speaker, and table topic?
Yes, and the tabletop people are here. So we have Charlotte, Dan, Jose, is that everybody? I guess that is everybody. Great. And we're gonna then turn to our grammarian, Tony.
Yeah. So as a grammarian, so first of all, I realize that for the people who give short speech, we barely make any mistake in grammar. For today, I didn't catch much of the other speaker when they speak, maybe because it's too short, or they tend to use a safe sentence structure so that we don't caught anyone in the grammar mistake.
Excellent. We are perfect, guys. Yay. Now, let's see how our perfection continues with our word master. Wang Ming, please.
General evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guest. I heard the following people use the word rapture, or rapturous. I heard Starlet, our guest,
Manod.
Manod,
Yeah.
Manod, Jose, Georgie, right? And myself. I think that's the only one I heard.
Cool.
Miss General Evaluator.
All right. I'd like to then move on to our counter, which is kind of tag teamed by myself and Harun. But let's start with Harun.
So Wang Ming, I counted 7 ahs and ums, mostly because the fact that there were Wang Ming spoke for longer duration. Georgie, 4. Tony, 4. And then Dan, I counted 7 ahs, you knows. Jose, I counted 2. There were 2 repeated does. And myself, I did 3.
Okay. And did you include the Hip-Hop people in it?
Yeah.
Oh, these are, okay, great, great. All right. Now, then the last but not least is our, maybe do we want to do joke now or later?
We'll do it now.
Do it now? Okay. If we could please have a joke, please, Mr. Joke Master.
We'll see whether this is a joke or not.
We've already had joke. We've already sent the ballots over. It's too late for that.
Marvelous. So, some of you might have heard about this concept. You know, people like Elon Musk and a bunch of other people, supposedly famous people, who think that we actually live in a virtual reality. And the reason why they think that way is because if you look at what virtual reality is for us, is we can use computer to generate all these graphics, and the graphics look really good and they look almost real. They think that there's a race of people that before us who have advanced so much that they can just have so much computer and so much stuff that they can recreate everything, every single atom, every single pieces of us. And each one of us is actually a virtual creation, so maybe not quite real. So that's what they think. Now just imagine, since we're all virtual, maybe we could, and just imagine how you are placed right now. What if, are you in a better place, or do you want to be more like Jeff Bezos or someone richer and so on, so they can have lots of consumer stuff? Or what if you are that, do you want to be that poor person on the street somewhere and be that virtual poor person? What if you turn out to be like that? I don't know whether this is a joke anyway. It was a joke before, but it didn't work out. Now, what if you have virtual cancer? Yeah. Do you want to have virtual cancer, or do you want to have being virtually rich? In any case, that's my joke. It did not work out. Anyway.
I think I have virtual car keys. The position, unfortunately, keep changing.
Okay.
And as a general evaluator, I guess I will evaluate that joke as well. just not sure where to start. All right. So the joke is definitely up for debate. As far as the rest of the meeting, it actually pulled together pretty well, which is not unusual. We have a strength for doing that. The thing I would say that we need to do is we need to work on starting on time, obviously. I think we started 10 minutes late this time around, and obviously everyone's very busy. The other thing would be, like I said, we probably need to get more notices out to make sure people sign up. Although people like me, who aren't sure I'm going to make it up in the morning sometimes, we just kind of slink in and hope we can just help out where we can. With that, I'd like to turn control back over to our acting president, Jose. Jennifer, our actual acting president, not virtual. Correct. I forgot.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Georgie. Thank you so much. Well, it's been a while since we see veteran members coming back, and Georgie is one example of bringing that veteran, that seniority to our club, and always it's a pleasure to watch Georgie as those veteran members to bring the experience to us. So thank you, Georgie, for coming back, and hope to see you very often. Yes. So in the last couple days, I was affected by a news of one of my friends and my partners in business. She has a younger brother. Went out to a trip in Vietnam to have a trekking, and then after the trek, they went to coming back to from the island, and then he and some friends coming to the sea to have a swim, and then one of their team members was not be able to swim well, and then when they were struggle, the younger brother of my friend went out to the sea to help them, and then he was not successfully coming back to the land, and it was hitting me hard because I also have a younger brother, and then only if I go to Vietnam I get to see him, and this was very surprise for my friend because she just went on a trip with him to Bali and have a very good sisterhood, brotherhood kind of trip, and then he suddenly no longer here to be with her anymore. So in the last couple of days, it was really affecting to me, and it's reflect to this meeting as well. Always at Toastmaster as our club, right? We have the second chance to improve. For example, if today we're not preparing well, if we're not coming here with a good preparation or not coming here on time. For example, with myself, I'm late today, but always there's a magical life. It's a beautiful opportunity to do it better next time, but it's not for my friend anymore, having the second chance to be with her brother. So with that being said, I sit there and I feel like, next week I can do better, and I hope that we also embrace this opportunity to do it better next week. And thank you, Scarlett, for giving this as a second chance for you to coming back after the very first chance that you met us in the open house. And I do hope that this club have our best ability in our shortest of members, and all the members are busy right now traveling, but these phases we want to commit to have a good meetings, good experience every single Wednesday for you all. And with that being said, I would love to hear from the guys today, to have your feedback of how we can improve or how you think you can contribute to this club. And I would like to ask Scarlett.
I think you guys are doing okay with the resources you have. I am not familiar with Toastmasters to suggest improvements until I become more familiar with it, but I think it runs pretty smoothly. I do like the structures of the meetings, and I do like the feedback. I like that it's not all positive because we don't always need to hear what we want to hear. We need to hear what we need to hear. So that's important. But But yeah, I think that I do appreciate people who are taking on multiple roles. I see that they're doing that, but they're able to do it effectively. So I think that's all I got.
Thank you, Scott. And Manos, it's not your first time here, right?
It's my second time, but
Right.
the last time was I think maybe 3 years ago or longer.
Oh.
Yeah, that time as Tony, Tony was your name? No, from
Jose?
Jose.
no.
Yeah.
You said that it was
Then.
much more people.
Right,
It was
right,
pretty
yeah, yeah.
crowded. But what I really like about this group is that you are very organized, and this time it was very impressive, and I was impressed about was the teamwork, and everyone was volunteering and to taking different roles, and it was like a good feeling to be involved and be part of the group. And in general, it was like a good spirit, the teamwork and support, and being organized again makes it for me to have a perception that I will reach my goals of being part of this group, and I would love to come back and then see if I would be a part of this group. It seems very professional and goal oriented. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, you have any feedback for us today?
Well,
You can.
you probably already know what I'm going to say because
Yeah.
I hate to sound like I'm harping on this, but can I just see a show of hands from the members here? How many people have renewed? I know you two have.
Yeah.
Oh, we also
Oh,
have
okay.
2 more renewals over there.
Yeah.
You renewed as well?
Okay.
Did you? Or-
It's time to renew our memberships.
Oh, renew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the next one in 2 days, Tony will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so far,
September 30.
September 30th is the
Yeah.
deadline,
Yeah.
and none of them actually have been processed on Club Central so far. So I don't know if your treasurer is taking care of that, but if he's not,
Yeah.
do you know how to renew members on Club Central?
Not yet.
Not yet? No, I can go over that with you later
Sure,
on. I
yeah.
went through it
Yeah,
with Tony, Jose a little bit earlier.
Mm.
So I can go over that with you at the end of the meeting.
Sure,
If you
sure.
could just please make sure that some club officer does it, even if not necessarily the president.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
right now, according to Toastmasters, you have 0 members renewing, and if that continues after September 30th, not.
Yeah, our treasurer is busy at his projects at Apple, so
Mhm.
he would be able to do that in today. So yeah. I reached out to the treasurer a couple times. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
I like this club. I would hate to see it not be recognized anymore by Toastmasters.
Right. So if only one renewal, is that recognized as still a
I'm
current
not too sure. The minimum for
Minimum
being a
is-
club in good standing is 8, but
8?
at least one keeps it in there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We'll make it into 80.
8 would be
80
wonderful.
to September 30.
80 would be a little bit unrealistic. I don't know how anyone would even get a chance to talk with 80.
Okay. Yeah. Then that was a joke, but it's not working well. As
That seems to be a theme for today's meeting.
Thank you, Dan. Thank
If you need a funnier joke, I can tell one about the librarian and the chicken next week.
All right. So we have an announcement. Now we have a drum roll, please, for the announcement of the winner today. And the best evaluator come to Harun. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our best speaker. The winner is Georgie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Georgie. Our best table topic speaker today come to Scarlett. It's her second time in a row. Congratulations.
That's law school course right there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like
That's
the chair back there.
Congratulations.
Okay,
We also
so
have
we
a
have-
picture. Our VPPR is not, she is voted. here for the roles next week.
We are full of speakers. I think we'll fill with speakers. I'll just be evaluating.
I can be evaluator too.
Yeah, eval one.
Are you sure with these speakers?
We've
Yeah,
got one of them
Sophie's coming.
here, so Waming,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
confirming.
Waming and Mohammed. Who's Mohammed?
Yeah, Mohammed, you might
Borrow
want to
Mo.
confirm.
Huh?
You might want to confirm with Mohammed.
Yeah.
Mohammed will.
And so seeking.
Yeah, Sikia. Yeah, she emailed me. Yes, she's coming.
Okay, yeah. Make sure.
I'll just
Who-
double check. I
who's
will
the-
double check. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's the Toastmaster?
I can be Toastmaster.
Okay.
Wonderful. And table topic master.
I'll be here next week, so I should be able to do that.
Yeah, wonderful. I never seen you be a Toastmaster yet. So this time.
I wouldn't be Toastmaster, I'd be table topic.
Table.
Yeah.
Stuff is that.
Sure that one of
Yes.
the club members wouldn't want to be table topics? Not so that we don't
That's
wanna-
fine.
It's just, you know,
I'll take table topics. Could I
Okay.
do that?
table
Could do that,
topics?
right?
Good,
Evaluation
okay.
and table
Okay.
topics. Right? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
I'll be evaluator.
So we got 3 evaluators then. So we've got Haroon, Waming, and Tony.
Tony
No,
Great.
wait a minute.
and me.
Isn't Wyoming speaking?
Yeah, I'm speaking.
Oh, sorry.
So
I thought
I'll be eval one.
you said- you
Eval
want to be,
one,
okay. Jose,
And
so you'll
then
be both,
Haroon will be eval
you'll
two.
be both table topics and
Table
evalu-
topics and evaluation.
Alright. And
Tony.
Tony
I
and
can be the backup
Haroon,
speaker.
right? For
I can
evaluator.
be the backup speaker.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Can I get anyone to volunteer to be an invocator so you can get here really early? Jennifer?
Okay.
Okay. Alright.
Jen.
Alright. So we do need a GE, but maybe we'll just wait until we get some more people because we already got like Jose doubled up. So
I can be G.
you want to be GE?
Yeah, sure.
So you'll double up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, but we will. I as Toastmaster, I will still encourage people to sign up. So.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
All right. With that being said,
I mean, I am
please
pretty
contend
good,
with
but
what you
I
have
don't know
today,
if I'm
not
done.
only inside this room but outside, and be happy and content. But don't lay back, okay? Yay! Be content.
Yay.
with
Thank you.
this.
Oh, you don't have much.
Never.
Gavel.
Yay. I dismiss the meeting.
Do you have a cell phone or something with you? Do you have a cell phone or something with you? Okay, that'd be good. That'd be good. Okay. Now that was not very good grammar.
We have a lot of silence.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll give it to Jenny because she's better than that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, someone like the PE or BPM should probably be contacting the members who aren't showing up and encouraging them to, maybe suggesting that they take one of the smaller roles. So would you like to be the timer this week?
Oh, sure.
Do we have a eraser for the board?
Oh, yeah.
Not here.
Alright, I'll just use that.
Jose, do you know the Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi for. Oh,
It's over there on the,
I lost the card. See the
card.
card?
Oh, it's
On
on
the
the
table.
card.
Uh,
Right here. On the card.
BNP events.
Oh, right there.
Could you just hand it over, please?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
So, who has my check? You have my check, yes.
Yes.
And I will see you guys next week.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
Here.
And I think this goes down here, right? I think. Yes, I think that goes there.
If they're alphabetical, then you probably want to scroll down.
So they got the room at 8:45.
Okay.
We need to move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Let's
just-
finish the
yeah,
top outside. Could you put this back, please?
This belongs to us, right?
Yeah, just I'm just gonna the box is all messed up now, so I'll just carry the coffee maker as one, as one.
Restrictive on the edges.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still on.